That's where the thank you. Stand still.
It's like showbiz.
Good evening, everybody. We're so glad that you could come tonight to this mayoral forum. I'm just starting with introductions a little bit earlier because we've got a jam-packed hour. And so I just want to introduce myself. I'm Reverend Wendy Bruner. I'm the pastor here at Peace, UCC. And Peace is part of a larger group called Churches Together for Justice. The churches up and down Lockwood participate. So the Presbyterian Church, First Congregational, Holy Redeemer, Christ Church Lutheran, and Emmanuel Episcopal and Peace. We all participate Wednesday nights at Churches Together for Justice. And we are really working hard to think about ways that we can live in a more just society. And so if you're ever interested in coming Wednesday night on Zoom, just give us a call and we'll invite you in to participate in that. We've done things like go to Jeff City, and this forum today on Saturday will be part of a social justice symposium hosted with Eden, Peace, and Metropolitan Congregations United. And then after our symposium, we'll be getting on the streets and knocking on doors to invite people to get out to vote on Tuesday, which is really important and which is why we're here tonight. So I am just so grateful to have Kathy Hart and Laura Arnold here tonight. What we're going to do, I'm just going to put a few ground rules out there so we know what we're doing. Oh, but before that, if you just go outside these doors and need to use the restrooms, while they're just over in that direction, so feel free to make use of those. I'm going to read these so I don't get them wrong. This isn't a debate tonight. It's a chance for each candidate to articulate their answers to a series of questions important to the members of Churches Together for Justice. So some of the questions we're going to ask tonight might sound a little bit different than some of the questions that we have been hearing so far. To start with, the candidates will give opening statements not to exceed 3 minutes. Clark is going to be timing, so we're going to make sure that that's, so please watch Clark's signs. We will go in the order that the candidates appear on the ballot. So we'll start with Laura Arnold and we'll follow with Kathy Hart. And then we'll switch up the questions. So Laura, I'll ask you the first question, and then Kathy, and then the next question, Kathy will be the first. We'll spend about 40 minutes on the questions that have been prepared and submitted to the candidates ahead of time. Each candidate will be given up to 3 minutes to answer the question, up to, so it doesn't have to take 3 minutes. Who answers first will alternate with the next question. And we'll get to as many questions as we can. We probably won't be able to get to all of the ones that we want to ask. Following the prepared questions, we'll spend about 10 minutes on questions submitted by you. You can write your questions on the index cards that Julie gave you as you were coming in. And if you are on Zoom, joining us with Zoom, you can just put them in the Zoom chat and we'll gather those in. During this time, answers will be limited to 1 minute apiece. We will get to as many of those questions as we can. We regret that we probably will not be able to get to all of them. At the end of the program, we'll hear a 1 minute closing statement from each candidate, this time starting with Kathy. The timekeeper will alert the candidates when they have 30 seconds left for an answer and when the time is up. For audience members, we just ask that you listen this evening. This is your chance to take in information and make your decisions. Your voice will most loudly be heard on Tuesday at the ballot box and when you talk with friends and neighbors. We as citizens are bigger influencers on each other than any advertisement or news story. And so I will begin tonight by asking each candidate for a 3 minute introduction, and we'll start with Laura.
Thank you very much, Reverend Bruner. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for Churches Together for Justice for
hosting this both in person and as well as through Zoom. I am a almost 40-year resident of Webster Groves. I love this community with all of my heart and all of my soul. I ran away from it, though, for about 15 years after I graduated from college. And my husband, David, and I came back about 20 years ago to raise our children and send them to Webster schools and go to church with us at Webster Groves Presbyterian Church. So we are rooted in this community. And I believe that if you're rooted in a community, you have to actually work with and on behalf of that community. And so I'm running for mayor because I believe it's my obligation to help shape the future of our community. You know, COVID has created unprecedented challenges for municipal governments across the country, including here in Webster Groves. And while there are welcome signs of improvement, that's going to be with us as a municipal government for a long time as we sort through budget and policy issues and follow up. Having been on the council these last 4 years, I'm intimately aware of the tough decisions that have been made and the ones that we still need to make to go forward. And in making those decisions, I want to focus on 3 priorities. The first is transparent and accessible government. I am committed to a government that is accessible and responsive to Webster Groves residents. And that means being open about our positions on issues. That means saying when we don't know. It also means inviting people to participate. It means being available to people who live in Webster Groves to hear what they have to say. And that is how I've been as a council member. I would continue that way as a mayor. And I think as a city, we need to embrace that more fully. The second thing is in focusing on development, I think we really need to zero in on what it is that our residents want. We want to be a community that remains accessible to all age groups and people in different economic circumstance. They need to share our community and continue to thrive in our community and bring great benefit to our community. And so I'm committed to development throughout our community that engages both residents and property owners on things that we can agree to, that we can build consensus around. And then finally, the third priority would be working responsibly with our budget. COVID has been a huge hit to our budget. As we move forward, we need to make sure we're making choices that really deal with what residents want, not what I want or what they might want or what the council might want. I am an experienced council member. I am a political scientist. I've taught American government for more than 20 years, PhD in political science. I'm a nonprofit leader. I currently serve as chair of Arts and Faith St. Louis. And I think hopefully tonight you'll see I can hold up the public speaking end of the mayoral responsibility as well. And I look forward to your questions and the opportunity to earn your vote on Tuesday.
I guess you guys can hear me. Okay. Good evening, and I want to thank everyone for being here and thank the churches for putting this together tonight. My name is Kathy Hart, and I'll give you a little personal background. I grew up here in Webster Groves. I went to Holy Redeemer and Narings Hall, and I graduated from the University of Missouri in St. Louis, and then from St. Louis U School of Law in 1990. I've spent almost my whole career as an administrative law judge in workers' comp downtown. As a judge, our office, well, we're downtown, so I was able to be involved in the Bar Association of Metropolitan St. Louis, which was right across the street from our office. So I served on the Bar Association board for several years and also served on our statewide Bar Association board. And in those capacities, I chaired almost all of our community service projects. Our necessities drive, where we collected items for domestic violence shelters. I chaired our Habitat for Humanity project, where we first raised money and then built our Habitat house. I created with some friends our Angel Tree project, which is a project that now has grown to benefit about 3,000 kids a year. We help them really have Christmas. It's for kids who either have a parent in prison or who are in the foster care system, and so they don't have resources. They don't have the best family life. So we've done our best to give them Christmas. I also have served on the Narings Hall Board of Directors since 2009, and I chaired Lucky me, it was during COVID, but we managed to do pretty well. I served on city council for 12 years, and just to tell you a little bit about what we accomplished while I was on council, we created a fiscally stable environment and ended each year with a budget surplus. The reserves that we saved up during my years on council helped us get through first the recession in 2008. And also that savings has been really helpful getting through the pandemic over the last few years. We brought the community together to give input into our development foundation plan. We enacted educational campus zoning, which took a long time, but it was, I think, really helpful in saving our institutions some money and providing certainty for the neighbors. We made a lot of park improvements. We created the Business Development Commission. And so all of this work has really given me extensive experience with policymaking and budget oversight and managing organizations. And I think those are the skills that I can bring as mayor of Webster Groves.
Okay, so here's our first question. So Laura will answer it first and then Kathy will answer it second. The last 5 words of the city's mission statement are: Webster Groves is a traditional yet progressive community. What does that mean to you?
Thank you. There have been a few jokes I've heard made about this because it does at the beginning seem to be contradictory. How can you be progressive and traditional at the same time? But I think it suggests what we aspire to as a community, which is to show respect for our history, for our traditions, for what we know about the things in the past that have made us what we are today. But at the same time, we know that there are things that we need to do better. We need to do differently, and we need to acknowledge that. And, you know, I have a friend who put it to me this way, because I asked a few people about this question before coming tonight, and she suggested to use the analogy of a house. So many of us live in very old houses. We love their history. We love their tradition. We love what we know about the architect or the builder. If we can find out, if it's over 100 years, most of us put a plaque on it because we want to recognize that tradition. At the same time, we want indoor plumbing and a modern kitchen. And we want a garage with an automatic garage door opener for the wintertime. And so we have to think, how is it that we can respect tradition, acknowledge tradition, and at the same time, as a community, be who we should be in the 21st century? And so that's how I would answer that question.
Well, I actually agree with you. But I know. So the whole mission statement is that Webster is committed to providing professional, efficient, and responsible services, to working with citizens to enhance our position as a premier place to live, work, and raise a family in a traditional yet progressive community. And what that says to me, the traditional part of this is our home, our community. We value our neighborhoods, our sense of freedom and caring for each other and caring about each other. So being traditional yet progressive, I think, means that while we value the traditional aspects of what we have in our community, we recognize that we don't live in a silo and things are going to change and we need to adapt to change. And that's hard to do, but I think we are, as a community, open to change. And in order to be successful at that, we need to be sure that we manage it properly. I'm on the change management team in my office, and we are going through a big structural organizational change. So what I've learned from that is we need to do things incrementally. We need people to be aware of the need for change and let people have input in what we want to do. So I think that speaks to our need really to have a community conversation about what changes we want to see and what we want our vision to be for Webster Groves.
So the next question, and Kathy, you will answer first, It can be difficult for first-time buyers, young people, or those just starting in their careers, like a new teacher in the Webster Groves School District, to be able to afford to live in Webster Groves. What are the main barriers ensuring attainable and diverse housing? And what are the strategies for overcoming those barriers?
I think housing is always going to be stable, if you will, in Webster Groves because of our location that keeps the demand high. But affordability is a topic that I think we all know we've talked a lot about lately. The main barriers I see for attaining and ensuring affordability and diverse housing is our supply of housing and really our focus on single family housing. We have a number of homes in Webster that could be considered to be affordable, but we don't have enough of them. And with our location in the St. Louis region, the number of these affordable units in our community are really being reduced. We see developers taking the opportunity to buy some of our affordable housing and build bigger homes. And that may be what some people want. But if we really want to address the affordable housing question, again, I think it speaks to our need to have some community conversation. Some people suggest that we have seniors who want to downsize. We have young families. We have single people who may not want the maintenance and the work of a big house. The restrictions in our zoning code allowing for locations of multifamily only in certain areas can be a problem. And I think the duplex ordinance from last summer had the potential to really remove a lot of our middle-class housing in town. So I would like us to see a community conversation about the benefits, the sacrifices that are inherent in changing our zoning code or in building some more density or multifamily housing. Look at where we can do that, what kind of development we want to have, and just see if we can create a vision for that throughout town.
So now it's my turn to say I agree with quite a bit of what Kathy said. When we talk about barriers to affordability and accessibility, let's make sure we understand we're talking about two different things. One is we're talking about the housing that we already have. How are we going to preserve what is affordable and attainable already? And then the question asked about expanding those opportunities as well. And so we have to think about what are the barriers to expanding those. And when we think about preservation, the barriers there, really the biggest one right now is infill housing, tearing down $75,000, $125,000 houses and building something that's 4, 5, 6, 7 times more expensive than that. Now, as a council, we last year passed an ordinance to try and shape that a little bit. We can't tell people they can't do that. In the United States, you have property rights. But we did pass an ordinance to try and scale down just a little bit as far as we actually legally could to make sure that smaller options were available for builders. The other big barrier that we think about is related in preservation is related to infill housing as well. When you have a lot of infill housing going up around you, your property taxes go up. We have lower income seniors who have trouble staying in their house. Their house becomes a target for developers because that property tax is going up and up and up. So we do have some barriers to the preservation. We also have some barriers to expansion. The biggest barrier to expansion is that we are a fully built community. You're not going to find a big field somewhere where we can put up a multifamily development. It just doesn't exist. So to me, that is the most significant barrier. The other barrier for us is if we're talking about housing options that would rely on state or federal assistance to get them built, we're too affluent. As a community, because of our economic level, we're not eligible for most of those programs. And so we are going to have to think creatively as a community, how do we promote more multifamily in the space that we have? And one of the things that we've done as a council is to now you can by right build up to a 4-story building in the business districts, 1st floor retail, 3 stories of multifamily housing. to try and promote some of these places where seniors can go, hopefully where some families can go, so that we are providing more housing opportunities within our community. I do also want to say, we got to recognize that this is a regional problem. This isn't a problem of Webster Groves. This is not, actually more than a regional problem, it's a national problem. And so one of the things we have to do is focus on working with others. I led the effort of the council to encourage the county to create an affordable housing trust fund. We as a council were on record as supporting that. I am constantly in touch with local leaders in the housing movement. I'm going to be on a panel next month to talk about housing options that is being arranged by the mayor of Maplewood. We have to talk to each other and figure out regionally as well as locally what we can do.
Questions, so take a swig of water quickly. What is your commitment to making this happen? What we've just talked about, attainable housing. What is your commitment to making this happen, and how will we know when success is being achieved? And before Laura gets up, I just want to say the question cards that you have received, we will be picking them up at about 7:30. So if you've got a question card at 7:30, just put your hand up like this and somebody will come and get them. Okay, Laura.
This part's a lot more fun because it's identifying solutions rather than talking about the problem. And so we as a city have lots of options out in front of us. We are not going to invent a new solution to our housing challenges. All sorts of cities all across the country have created solutions. Our job is to look at those and figure out what fits our community. What do we as Webster Groves think is a policy that is going to work for us? And that means community input and discussion. We had that with the housing plan that the council put together just before the pandemic set in. And we need to do much more of it because, frankly, the pandemic has changed how we all think about housing as well. What are some of these options? Well, we could look more at our zoning. I talked about this footprint and trying to make houses a little bit smaller. Are there other zoning things that we can do? One of the things that's the council is talking about, but it's really in early stages, is something called an accessory dwelling unit. Can you rent an apartment above your garage to help you pay for your house? You can't do that now. And we used to have lots of students who lived in garage apartments in our community. You don't have that anymore. Can we expand our home loan program in a way that allows us to help people who have trouble maintaining their homes do a better job of that? Those houses then are not targets for developers in the same way. They're more likely to be maintained, sold, or passed down to the next generation. I've become very involved with a working group here in town working on something called a community land trust, which is a way to preserve affordable homes. It's kind of a complicated process, but I'll give you the short version, which is it is a public-private partnership that ultimately is simply a private organization that separates the ownership of the land from the house. And this 501c3 holds the land, buys the land, pays for the land to make the house price more affordable. And people then can buy that house, pass that house on, sell that house, get some wealth, but it retains some affordability because of the way the process is structured. I also have talked several times with Michael Powers, who is the real estate director for Habitat for Humanity. He and I did a couple of tours right before COVID of potential sites within Webster Groves that we could consider. We're on hold with that because they were already 3 years out when we talked pre-COVID and they put most of their projects on hold. But I think we can rekindle that and really have another discussion about whether our community is available. The second part of the question is, how do we know that we are meeting these goals, or what is success? We collect metrics all the time. And this is one place where I think data is going to tell us a lot. What kind of questions do we want to know from data? Are fewer houses being knocked down? Are the houses that are being built smaller or more affordable? If we have a home loan program, are we really meeting the needs of that program? Do we have excess people who are applying? Are we not having enough people applying? So we can have data that will help us define success.
Okay, I am very committed to bringing our community together to review our comprehensive plan and our development foundation plan, as we've talked about in other questions. But we've had just so much consternation over the last few years, and we really need to move forward. I've heard so many people say that, they felt like they weren't being heard, or that the council was out of touch with what they wanted. They feel like the duplex ordinance was imposed on them. So again, I think it's really important for us to have some community conversations and let everyone have some input into what they want to see in our city. As we do this, I think that we should look at our neighboring communities and see what has worked in some of the municipalities around us. A number of our cities and our neighboring cities have more multifamily and more apartments and condos, but that's not necessarily more affordable. So I think we should look and see what's worked in other places too. And I agree on the accessory dwelling unit issue, or ADUs. That's important to look at. And there also, I'd like to see what's worked in the St. Louis region. I think the discussions are early on, and the city was looking at how this issue had played out in places like Seattle or San Francisco. And I'd like us to look at that more in St. Louis region. And I agree on the metrics. I mean, this is a government. We have data on everything. So I know that we can look and see, how many houses are rebuilt, how many apartments are built, how many condos are built. And I don't think it's a process that's really going to have an end. It's going to take a long time. And we need to constantly have these conversations.
Kathy, sorry. I have your name next to the question. I'm not sure why I'm having a problem here. How do you view the racial climate in Webster Groves? What experience do you have with racial justice issues?
Well, Webster Groves is not a perfect community, and we have had instances of racial profiling or graffiti or discrimination that has been a struggle for the city and the school district to deal with. I've had a lot of experience with racial justice issues. When I was chair of the board at Narings Hall just a couple of years ago, we hired the Diversity Awareness Partnership to do our own diversity audit. We implemented their recommendations and increased our scholarship giving so that we could educate students of all backgrounds, racial and economic backgrounds. I also created Project Angel Tree, which I told you a little bit about, but that is a project that helps kids who have a parent in prison or are in the foster care system. And so they came to us for years for this Christmas project. And then we got to see some of these children were growing up and are young teenagers, and they needed something a little more. So we partnered with the Police Athletic League in the city. And so those officers worked with these kids to give them something to do, to give them some mentorship and to keep them safe. As a council member, I worked closely with Ed Robinson, who lived in North Webster, and we served on council together for about 4.5 years. And I supported all of his ideas and recommendations for improvement to his community, which is really all of our communities. A big concern about the racial climate in Webster Groves really is the ability to attract and retain our minority population. And addressing this issue is a little more complex as people are leaving our community really because of economic conditions rather than a racial upheaval. This is not a problem that's unique to Webster Groves. So I'd like to see us form some community partnerships to help people who want to stay here, but maybe can't afford the upkeep on their homes or can't afford the rehab that they would need to do to stay in their home and age in place, similar to Habitat for Humanity. But I know we have people in this community who already are forming some housing partnerships like that, and we could expand that to help some of our citizens who live here now. Thank you.
So we absolutely in Webster Groves have a legacy of racism that we haven't fully addressed. And we have to be honest with ourselves about that, because if we're not honest with ourselves about that, we're not going to change anything. I was at Webster University today, and one of the students in the class talked to me about how a friend of hers, who is a Black woman, sitting on a bench reading a book, car drove by, out the window, she heard racial epithets being yelled at her. We have swastikas and white supremacist graffiti going around our community. So to pretend that there isn't an issue for us to think about and address, I don't think is being fully honest. Having said that, I agree that this is a generational change that we're going to have to make. But we as city leaders can do just that. We can lead. We also do need to think about people's experience in our community. I know certainly that as a white woman, I experience our community differently than some of my neighbors who are Black. And I have to remember that when we're thinking about policy arrangements and thinking about what we as a city can do. In terms of what we as a council have done, I'm going to recognize my colleague Pam Bliss, who is in the audience, because she helped us as a council draft the very first diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that we had as a city. We know that a lot of that is aspirational. We know it's something that we have to look to guide us, but also to hold us accountable as a city when we make decisions. We also have our first DEI study. I think we're going to have a question about that later, so I'll skip over that a little bit just to say that, I helped recruit the woman who came and did a very in-depth study for us and gives us some real ideas about moving forward. I also led the revision of our fair housing laws so that we now have a better enforcement mechanism when people are discriminated in housing in our community. And also that people now who use a voucher to rent a house cannot be discriminated, or an apartment cannot be discriminated against in our community. I certainly was a strong supporter of the creation of the Police Community Engagement Board. We're going to talk about that, so I'll skip over that one for now too, and we'll come back to it. But I'm proud of the evolution of that organization. And then in terms of, I've done a lot of different kinds of training, and probably for the role of mayor, the most important training that I have done is through Forward Through Ferguson. They do a seminar on structural racism and policy making. And that's our job, is to make policy and to think about the structures in which our city operates. And so that is, to me, I think, very useful. I've been involved, I've done Witnessing Whiteness. I've been involved in Leadership St. Louis's equity issue engagement as well. And so I'll leave it at there. It's a list. It's not worth you hearing the list, but just know that I've put some time into that.
Okay, so I have 7:30. So if people want to put their hands up, if they've got questions, we'll have folks come and get those from you. And we may not get to all the questions. So just so you know, you should have talked about the police community engagement board, because we might not get there. So here's the next question, Laura. The city recently completed a diversity, equity, and inclusion audit with specific recommendations. What do you think of these recommendations, and what would be your priorities in moving those recommendations forward?
All right, I think you did give the number, right? There are 4 basic recommendations that came out of our DEI audit and study. I think we need to think about the first 2 before we go to numbers 3 and 4. Here's the trick though. I don't know whether 1 should come first or 2 should come first. So let me talk about each one of those, and maybe some of you will have some feedback as we move along. Number 1 is that we need to create a DEI strategy and plan to leverage the strengths of our community and address the barriers to DEI work. And that means creating a vision and mission statement and communication plans for both the public and our employees. All right, so that's number 1. Hold that in your mind for a minute. Number 2 is to create a DEI council of employees and community members who take ownership of determining the most appropriate DEI initiatives within the city, and then utilize the talents and skills that we have in our community and on our staff to really develop these ideas. And so here's my dilemma in terms of how you prioritize these. If we do 1 first, then we don't leverage our community and our staff in quite the same way that we could to help us set the vision and mission. but maybe we need a vision and mission to really get that DEI council forward. So I'm going to throw it open. Those are two right now. We've asked our DEI consultant, Gloria Carter-Hicks, to come back and give us some information about what she thinks. But I think those are the two most important things. That's not to diminish number 3 and number 4. Number 3 is about how we hire, recruit, and retain employees, how we differ our structures and strategies in going new places. We have a partnership, as an example, with Lincoln University. We hired a young Black police officer out of their criminal justice program, and then we sponsored her to go to the police academy, and she joined our police force. That's an unusual way for us to do it, but it was a very successful template for us to use and to think about when we think about maybe firefighters or other people who need specific training. And then 4th is to hold regular listening and discussion sessions, both inside City Hall and in the community, to focus on the concepts of DEI and educate us as a community, right? So internally, we're going to focus on upholding the plan, discussing why we're doing what we're doing within the city. Externally, why does this matter for our community? What are the benefits to our community if we're more diverse and more equitable? And we can't really, so 4 has to come almost last, because we need that mission and vision and organization to really effectively communicate with our broader community in what DEI work really means to us. And 3, we've already started. I just think we need to hit it harder, and I'll stop there.
Okay, I'm not going to repeat all of those because I think you get the picture. But, I think the audit or the study was a really good step in moving forward with this. And I kind of also look at the first and the second recommendations as something to do together. And the group that we appoint, or the council appoints to be on our DEI council, includes city employees and community members. And I would expect that some of those community members and employees will have a lot of experience dealing with this topic, and they can help the council create our vision and our strategy and our plan. So to me, it's a working group together. And I think the 3rd and 4th steps kind of naturally flow from there.
Kathy, your turn again. How would you as mayor manage conflict or disagreement to be more productive and create an equitable and trusting work environment for city employees?
Well, managing conflict and disagreement is what I do every day. So I think I've got a pretty good handle on that. And, our next mayor and council really need to work together as a team and focus on what we need to do to improve the morale in our organization and what we need to do to move our city forward. So I think our next mayor and council really need to stop being so focused on trying to cast the blame for all of our problems on someone else. It really doesn't matter. We need to follow the collective bargaining agreements. We need to stop putting out press releases that even criticize our own mayor and call her a liar. I think we need to show our employees that we value them. I hear employees say that they feel like they can't talk to each other. Some of their benefits have been taken away, and the morale is awful. And the city was a great environment and a family environment to work in. And I think they're really disappointed. The DEI survey showed that our employees feel like they were not getting information from management, and they just needed to keep their heads down. So the next mayor and council really need to be leaders and need to show our employees that we care about them and we want their input and we value them. I think a good start would be with an employee survey and have those answers go directly to the mayor and council. We need to have some just more honest and open dialogue with our employees and get their thoughts and their ideas to build a respectful workplace. We need to show empathy and compassion and that we care about them. So that's all I have.
So I'm going to answer first the question a little more broadly than that, because, when we think about managing conflict or disagreement, what we're really doing is making policy and providing services and structuring programs, and inherent in that is going to be some conflict and disagreement. The question is it productive for us to move forward and meet the goal that we've set? So what I'm going to say, one of the key things to this is that we focus on productivity. And how do we do that? Well, first of all, it has to be about what we're trying to do. What's the goal being sought? What's the benefit to the community that we're talking about? This has to be something that we're focused on. It's not about winning or my side being better than the other side. It's what is the best interest of the community as we move forward. The second thing is that we need to keep our emotions under control. I think I do a pretty good job of that. I'm not sure that we as a city, and I'm not just talking about the city council, I'm talking broadly about staff, newspapers, everywhere. We haven't really kept our emotions under control very much in the last couple of years. And I think part of that is COVID. Everyone feels a whole lot of stress, but productive disagreement is about keeping emotions out of it. And we need to do that. We have to leave prior disagreements out of it. If I don't, I already said that I have a couple of colleagues in the audience. We don't agree on everything, but that shouldn't play into the next decision that we have. If I disagree with the city manager, and I have on multiple occasions, that shouldn't influence our next interaction on the next policy. We have to think about, again, what's the goal? Now, in terms of how to create a more, and the other thing, and this is the transition into thinking about staff. We have to prioritize mutual respect. We have to acknowledge that we have differences. We have to value those differences, and we have to be respectful of one another in how we behave, how we talk to each other, and how we set the priorities for our organization. And so I do agree with Kathy in one area, and that is that the DEI study, as well as our compensation classification study, provide a roadmap for us. I mentioned the internal listening discussions that were part of the DEI recommendations. I think those are critical because employees do need to feel heard and feel valued. We need to continue a practice the new city manager put in place, and that is to involve employees in the hiring process of their peers. It's my understanding that that didn't happen before, but part of your value is being able to select who you work with. And we also have to think about compensation. I know that not everyone thinks that it's not just about the money. I get that. But if your 40% of your workforce is underpaid, how do they feel respected in that sense? Thank you.
So this is the last question. And Lori, you get to answer it first. What does government transparency mean to you? And so let me just say, it's the last question, and then Julie's going to get up and ask your questions. So, okay, let's start again. What does government transparency mean to you, and how have you put it into practice as a council member?
Get on the spot first. Thank you. So transparency, what it means to me is that you as the public get the good news and you get the bad news. And sometimes governments try really hard not to give you the bad news and only want to give you the good news. I don't think that's transparent. I think it also means being, as an elected official, honest about your opinion. And that includes being honest when you don't have one yet, or you don't know what to think yet. And then it also means making information easy to find and easy to understand. Supplying that information to the public. And in the 21st century, we should be able to do that very, very easily. David Franklin, my colleague who's sitting in the audience as well, pushed really hard pre-pandemic to get us to put our meetings online. Pandemic brought it about, but we'll never go back because we have more engagement now from the public than we've ever had before because people can see our meetings in their own home, in their own time. I never thought I'd like YouTube quite so much. It also means explaining the why of something, not just the what, whenever you can. We need to explain our decisions to be transparent and not just dictate this is going to be the next policy. As a member of the council, how have I been transparent? I have, since my very first month in office, sent out a monthly newsletter to the public, whoever wanted to sign up for it, that says, here's what council's working on. Here's some things that are going on in boards and commissions. Here's what you should be interested in. And kept that going through the 4 years. I've answered over 700 emails about city issues. Most of those came from residents. I have been publicly available for office hours through my entire career. And I have really encouraged the disclosure of information. And that includes something like Douglas Hill, where we had more information publicly available so our residents could really dig in and understand the project. And we need to do that regularly. And I'm also going to say, because you govern the way you campaign, I have an incredibly transparent campaign. Every one of my donors, every one of my volunteers, everyone who has a yard sign is listed on my website. You know exactly who's supporting me. And I'm proud to say right now I looked today, 165 different donors with an average donation of about $80 and a list of 450 endorsers, supporters, volunteers. And so 90% of those donations come from within Webster Groves. So through this campaign process, you all know what you need to know about me as a candidate, about who's supporting me. And then I hope through my communication about what it is that my vision for Webster Groves is and what my positions are on issues. Thank you.
Okay, to me, government transparency means being available for discussion and questions and providing honest and direct answers to our residents and our business community. It means when people come to council with questions, if we don't know the answers, then we make sure someone gets them an answer right away. When people come to council to speak for or against an issue or an ordinance, that we listen to them, we hear them, we discuss their perspectives, and people need to know and see that we hear them. I think transparency also means following the law, the procedures, and being good stewards of our resources. And people pay a lot of taxes for our city services, and they have a right to know how their money is being spent and what the city is doing. When I was on council and we had some difficult issues or ordinances to work through, we had extra meetings because we wanted to let everyone have the chance to be heard. We discussed their perspectives in open sessions for all to see and hear, and we took our time to build consensus and try to come to some common ground. So I think transparency is being honest about our feelings and listening to everybody and hearing their perspectives.
Okay, we're going to do some questions from the audience now. I don't know that we'll have time to get through all of them, but here's the first one. Is it 1 minute per answer, candidates? And Kathy will start. Yes. Okay, describe your past involvement with Webster Groves School District and what you will do as mayor to promote collaboration.
Okay, I went to Avery for kindergarten, and then I went to Holy Redeemer and Narings Hall. So I don't have a lot of involvement with the school district as a student. As a city council member, we often had meetings with the school board because I think we have a lot of common issues. We're all one community and we need to govern together. I don't think there have been any meetings with the school board and the council for several years. So as mayor, I would like to reinstitute that practice so we can talk about our common issues together.
So I actually went to Webster schools through Hickson, and then I also went to a Catholic high school. But my 3 children, I have 23-year-old triplets, they did go throughout Webster Groves High School, up through Webster Groves High School, and had a great experience. I was a volunteer in every building they were in, from the Ambrose preschool through the high school. I served on the Legislative Advocacy Committee for the school district for at least 5 years. And as a council member, I met quarterly with the chair of the Webster Groves School Board myself. Kathy's right, the council didn't have a formal meeting, and so I created my own series of meetings in order to stay informed. Most recently, I worked with the mayor and John Simpson, the superintendent, our Office of Public Works and the County Office of Public Works to really begin designing a transformation of the Big Bend and Elm intersection. We have more kids than ever at Hickson walking to Hickson. That's not a pedestrian-friendly intersection, and we've got to improve that. And those are the kinds of things that we need to actually work with the district on rather than just communicate.
Okay. Laura, yeah, Laura, you're right back up. Here you go. All right, next question. To balance the city budget, what revenues, taxes would you increase? And what expenditures, staffing, and salaries would you cut?
That in a minute is totally impossible. So we'll do our best. Number one, you have Proposition U in front of you on your ballot on Tuesday. It is fundamentally important that we balance the scales with our brick and mortar businesses and online businesses in how sales tax is applied. In addition, when you buy on Amazon, that doesn't mean your need for public safety goes down. It doesn't mean your need for streets and street maintenance goes down. It just means there's less revenue for us to meet those needs. And frankly, those trucks make it worse in terms of maintenance. So that's one way to increase revenue. I think another way that we really need to focus on, I've done some seminars on the federal transportation bill that was passed earlier or last year now. There are lots of opportunities for grants and for infrastructure, and we need to be ready to apply for a whole bunch of them because not only is it roads and bridges, but it's also stormwater, and we have real stormwater issues that we need to address. So that's another way, and now I get the stop sign.
Okay, as far as revenue, I mean, it's difficult to increase revenue without raising taxes, and I would prefer not to do that. One thing we can look at is we are a pooled sales tax city, so that means a lot of the sales taxes we get are from other cities, from us spending money in other cities, and it's based on our population. So if we can find a way to work in some more apartment, multifamily, and raise our population, that will raise our revenue itself. I think as far as expenditures, the presentation I saw from city staff talked about cutting expenditures, and which we may have to do. I'd like to dive a little more deeply into the budget and see what our true financial state is. But I don't like the idea of making our biggest departmental cuts in our police and fire departments. They provide safety for us, and that's what makes our community so strong.
Okay, as mayor, will this be your full-time job or a part-time position?
No, the mayor is not a full-time job. And in case you don't know, the mayor has not had a raise since 1954. Their mayor's salary is $25 for a meeting, up to $750 a year. As a council member, I worked full-time, but still committed a significant amount of time to working for the city for 12 years on council. I know Mayor Welch spends a significant amount of time at City Hall, and I know that I can still continue to do that even though I do work. I'm thinking about retiring. I've been in my job, just now celebrated my 30th anniversary. So I'd like to work part-time and have a little more time to devote to the city.
So I have actually retired from teaching, and I have available as much time as it takes. And it's not so much the number of hours when you're mayor, it's that people want you places when they want you there. And are you available to be there for the Boys or for the Eagle Scout ceremony? Are you there for the regional mayor's meeting? Are you there for all of our meetings? And I do think, given my retired status, I do have some nonprofit boards that I still will work with, but this will be the highest priority, and I'll make whatever work that the mayor's job demands.
Thank you. All right, Laura. Sorry.
One of us is going to get it right.
All right. How will you, as mayor, support local businesses and promote expanded commercial growth?
So I really like this question. I am currently the liaison to the Business Development Commission, and we have recently spent a whole lot of time thinking about this very issue. One of the priorities is to make sure that we stop thinking about Webster Groves as a series of business districts. We do this in Old Orchard and we do this in Old Webster, and you're truncating your business community in a way that doesn't give us as much energy and efficiency. And so we're working very hard on that. The second thing is, for the first time in I don't know how long, we had a business roundtable in November in which business owners came and talked to us about what the city is doing well, what the city's not doing well, what the city should be doing but is not yet doing, so that we can adjust policies and programs within City Hall to better serve the businesses that we have. And the BDC is actually going to recommend that we think about a position to focus at least part-time on recruiting new businesses for our community. What are we missing in terms of businesses? And can we have someone whose job it is to identify that and work on it?
When I was on council, we created the Business Development Commission because we had we had the Old Webster Business Advisory Group, Old Orchard, Crossroads, all working kind of independently. So we created the Business Development Commission and specifically put members on the commission from each area in town. And, you know, our business owners are the experts. They know what they need. They know what they need the city to do to attract more businesses here. I hate to bring up the word Douglas Hill and the development, but I think the city could look in that area and, you know, fix the streets a little better, do some more upkeep in that area and things like that in different business districts too. And that will attract more businesses here, I think.
Okay, we have time for one more question. And for those of you that did not, and there's several of these up here that did not get your question answered, I'm sure the candidates would be willing to talk with you afterwards. So feel free to see them either in here or out in the lobby. All right, this question says, other nearby communities have a quote, race relations or social justice commission. Would you support the creation of a commission such as this?
Well, I think part of the issues that those commissions address maybe are addressed a bit through our police engagement board and our police community engagement board. So I don't know about a separate commission. I think we should work with the police and with our police community engagement board. And I would like to see them do some more activities to help do just that, engage the police with our community. Like I mentioned with the Police Athletic League in the city, I think that did a lot for a lot of these young kids to keep them out of trouble and to teach them that, you know, all law enforcement is not a bad thing. So if we could work with that board to do some more community-wide events in a non-police manner, and, you know, have some sports leagues with the cops or some mentor opportunities, I think that would go a long way.
So I think this is a question that is aptly put to the new, the commission under the DEI plan, right? Who's going to identify for us what are the things that we ought to do to move our city forward in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I would say, yes, the Police Community Engagement Board is important in this, but it's a limited version of thinking more, we need to think more broadly than that. And also, frankly, we just had to reauthorize the PCEB, and we worked really hard in partnership with the Alliance for Interracial Dignity to strengthen its mission, to strengthen the directions given to the board so that they really have more activities. They've spent a whole lot of time learning what the police department's doing and how they should do it. We now need them to do the engagement part. And I know they want to, and I know they're trying to, but it can't do that engagement and then this whole other set of issues. So I would say this is the decision in terms of structure and whether we do this for our DEI commission.
First of all, I want to say thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. Thank you, Kathy and Laura, for being here to answer questions. Certainly, if you've got other questions, and I know that I've got one burning in my mind right now that I will talk to both of you about as soon as we're finished here, please don't hesitate to ask people. And I am going to invite Kathy to speak. You have a closing statement, and it is how long again? I cannot remember. 3 minutes.
How about two?
Two. Oh yeah, it's only 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Excellent.
Okay, I know. I was prepared for one, but I can talk longer. So now I just wanted to again thank everyone for being here tonight and for organizing this event. And I want to tell you why I know that I'm the better candidate for mayor. I have the experience, knowledge, and skills as a mediator to restore stability to our town and stop the division in our community and restore the respectful environment that we have always had. I'm open to all opinions and ideas. I listen to everyone and I can find common ground to help us move forward. I know I can create a tone on our city council of being a group that will work together as a team and listen to everyone, confront our reality, stop blaming others, ask what we can do and what we can control and improve. This is what I do every day. I worked well with all the council members in the past that I served with. We were an effective group and we made decisions for the best interests of our entire community. And I want to thank the Firefighters Union and the Webster Groves Police Officers Association for their endorsement. They know I will hear them and hear the community and bring unity to City Hall again. And I wanted to tell you briefly, since Laura mentioned about donations, all of my donations are from my family and my friends and people with ties to Webster Groves. One donation from New York is my cousin. One in Seattle is a friend of mine who used to live across the street from me in Webster Groves. So it's all Webster people too. Thank you.
So last week's forum, I did a little different closing, and this week's forum, I'm going to do another different closing. I'm supposed to tell you why I'm the best candidate for the mayor, but to be the mayor, but I actually decided that maybe I should spend some time talking about what motivates my commitment to public service, right? What are the values that underscore why I want to be mayor in the first place? And so the first motivation is definitely my family. Growing up, my parents didn't tell us to be active in the community. They showed us each and every single day what it meant to be a responsible citizen. And they served in a range of capacities in our community, both in Webster Groves, in Missouri, and nationally. And so it wasn't about telling, it was about demonstrating that you honor your community and the people in it by committing your time and your talent to it. So that's the first motivation. The second motivation that I'm actually really, really nervous about this, and I don't get nervous about these things, but I am going to do a little biblical interpretation with a minister sitting right here in front of me. So bear with me, please. The second really motivation for public service is my faith. And many of you will be familiar with the passage from Micah that says, and I'm going to sort of read it because I'm afraid on the spot I'm going to forget it. What does the Lord require of you? To seek justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God. And to me, those are the elements that we need in public service. We have to seek justice for everyone who is in our community, that they're treated fairly, and that they're valued. We have to be kind because that recognizes the humanity of every single person in our community when we are kind to them. And we have to have humility because I don't have all the answers. I will never pretend to have all the answers, but I will listen to anyone who has suggestions and solutions that they want to offer. And I think that is actually what makes me the best candidate for mayor, is my demonstrated willingness to hear everyone out no matter what their position is. Hopefully earn your vote on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thanks again, everybody, for coming. I'm going to lift up a couple of things. First of all, number one, please vote on Tuesday. Please vote on Tuesday. Number two, if you have nothing else to do, actually, or make it a priority to do on Saturday, is come to our Social Justice Symposium. We're going to be talking about the importance of voting and creating our own power and voice. And so that is at Eden Seminary from 9 to 12:30. And then after that, after you have been inspired, we're going to invite you to go canvassing in Webster to get out the vote, to encourage people to get out the vote on Tuesday so that we can raise our voices. So grateful for that. There's some information at the back about the symposium. Also join us for our Black Lives Matter vigils that come up on Fridays. All the churches down Lockwood are having them. So just show up anywhere and stand on the sidewalk with us. So grateful that you could be here. If you've got questions, we'll just invite you to take them out into the narthex, and Kathy and Laura can come and spend a few minutes. Thanks again for being here with us this evening.
Thank you.